It's Q&A time, ladies and gentlemen. We haven't done one of these for the longest time, but we've had some brilliant questions come through from you lot on the community tab over on YouTube. I think we're talking Championship, we're talking Premier League. There's some silly ones, some fun ones, and I think we're going to be saving English football by the end of the Q&A. So let's get right into it right now. I'll try and do as many as possible. Sorry if your one doesn't get read out. Gavin, what was your reaction to your cameo in Welcome to Wrexham? Well, I don't watch Welcome to Wrexham. I've never watched Welcome to Wrexham, but all of a sudden, one day, you get a text, a WhatsApp, a email, a tweet, and I'm like, what's going on here? What's happened? And it's like, oh, I've just seen you on Welcome to Wrexham. So first things first, my reaction was curiosity. What did they get me saying? Obviously, they got me saying, I don't think Wrexham are gonna. I think they're gonna make a big splash. I said I don't think they're gonna finish in the top six though. And I guess for their storytelling there over on Disney, they were selling the narrative that people like me on the internet weren't sure whether Wrexham were going to challenge, and they did obviously, and they got promoted. And more power to Wrexham on their mega National League, League Two, League One rise up the divisions. But my reaction, I guess, flattered. It's nice to be involved. We made a funny short of it with the David Brent thing of, oh, they edited me to look a plonker and all that. So yeah, a bit of flattery. Nice to be considered a relevant voice, I guess. Sponge knock. There's always a question about my hair. What shampoo and conditioner do you use for your wonderful hair? I'm going to be very blasé about this. I don't even know. Like many people's bathrooms, it gets full of shampoo and conditioner. I haven't actually bought any shampoo and conditioner for the longest time. Shaylee bought some, my missus, that she didn't like. So I was using that. I can't even tell you what it was called. It was nice stuff. Bedhead, possibly. But then I used all of that, but not all of the conditioner. And then there's another bottle of shampoo. So I'm just going to use up whatever's in the bathroom, and then I'll probably do a big stockpile and buy 5 bottles of the same thing. But yes, people's preoccupation with my hair never ever goes away. Look, the beard's gone grey now, but we're holding out a little bit longer. The internet's going to get so excited when I chop it off when it goes properly grey up there, isn't it? Maya, Irish name that sounds like. Pick 5 championship players you think could go to the Premier League and not look out of place. Okay. Let's try not to use the parachute team. So, in terms of the playoff losers, Coventry, should we go Sheaf, Rudoni or Van Evik? I'll go Van Evik. For Bristol City, it's tricky. Jason Knight, although I don't know whether he's going Premier League level. I'm looking down the table. Millwall, maybe Ivanovic. Give him a couple more years. West Brom, Fellows, I like. Middlesbrough, Hackney, I like. Swansea, Sheffield Wednesday. Norwich, Sargent or Science? Let's say Sargent. Have I done 5 now? I think I just about have, haven't I? So, yeah, there's some talent, but obviously the transfers out of the EFL into the Premier League will be dominated by the parachute teams, won't they? What's the best goal, Connor, I've ever seen live? Oh, God, I can go back in the day to Leighton Baines for Wigan at Portman Road. Look that one up. Wow, what a strike. Oh, God, I've seen some beauties. Too many. I guess to try and take it up to date for the most recent, and obviously my history with being able to get to games was right up to the pandemic. I was there. I was at probably 2 or 3 games a week. Pandemic hits, football shuts down. I lose my job. We have a beautiful daughter in the pandemic, and we come out, and all of a sudden my life is not so much going to live games, but being here in this office, which we also built during the pandemic, doing stuff from here. So I want to pick one close to the pandemic. Do you know what? I was at Hull versus Leeds, and Tyler Roberts scored a goal for Leeds, which just summed up Bielsa ball and that period of the Championship. And someone can look up the date. It was very close to the pandemic kicking in, and it was just a very typical Bielsa goal. And it started to build up right in front of me, and you saw it fan out, spread out over the other side, and they found the space. And you have that lovely moment with a goal with a lovely build-up where halfway through you say to yourself, oh, if they score, if they finish this off, that's a hell of a goal. And that is what they did. So, yeah, look it up. It's Hull, I think it's 4-0 or 4-1 or something. Leeds win, probably just before the pandemic, maybe early in 2020. Rouster, if Ipswich never existed, who would you support? Well, a lot of people know. My dad supports Norwich. So my mum's from Framlingham, which has now been made famous for being the home of the Castle on the Hill and good old Ed Sheeran. My dad grew up in Diss, which is halfway between Ipswich and Norwich. So he supports Norwich. So, yeah, I had a choice when I was growing up in Ipswich. I could have gone, lots of people just support the team their father supports, don't they? In which case, dun, dun, dun. But, yeah, that might be the answer if Ipswich didn't exist. Although if I grew up in Ipswich, Colchester would then be my closest team. But yeah, if Ipswich didn't exist, there'd only be one. Maybe it would be a big Premier League team because they'd have the whole of East Anglia as the fan base. Maybe it should have been Diss rather than Ipswich or Norwich, right in the middle. Hey, Luke Footy Boy, are you going to be predicting women's Euro matches weekly like you did with the football leagues? With it being the end of the current men's season. Luke, I am not. It's tricky with women's football because part of you feels like you want to support as it grows, and obviously I've got a 3-year-old daughter who, I don't know, she might get my genetics and not be very good at sports, but she may want to play football or follow women's football as it grows. So you want to kind of look at it on the one hand, but then on the other hand, it's like you've built up doing championship and men's football. So you've built your audience there. So it's probably not something that we're going to do on the channel, but it is something over on my side hustle there on the Blue Monday podcast, where we are putting some attention in. The football follower, Ipswich treble, or England Euros, then World Cup, then Euro again. I would go for, I'm going to be very unselfish here, I'd go for England, because I just want to see it in my lifetime, what it will be like if the national team does something, and just hopefully the beautiful coming together of the country and people being happy across the country and people becoming legends. Whoever scores that goal, is going to be a knight of the realm and a legend forevermore. I think that would be, brilliant and maybe slightly more realistic than Ipswich winning a treble. JM Karting, which are the best and worst fan bases you've experienced in the Championship / EFL? Look, I'm not going to come on here and criticise anybody's fan base. You know me, that's not worth my while. It's funny when you study football as a neutral, because let me take a swig of my drink. I've genuinely been to games where Team A is playing Team B, and a fan of Team A will tell me, oh yeah, couldn't hear their fans, they were really bad, blah, blah, blah. And then a fan of Team B in exactly the same game will say, oh yeah, their fans were awful, couldn't really hear them. So I think it just gets a bit tribal and a bit, everybody thinks their fan base is the loudest, the best, the most supportive, and everybody else's doesn't rank. What I will say is one thing I do remember, when Ipswich were in League One in those dark days, remember them playing at home to Fleetwood and losing. Joey Barton was Fleetwood manager, actually. Whatever became of him. And it was like a Tuesday night game or a Wednesday night game, midweek game, whatever night it was. And my God, I think there was like 50 Fleetwood fans turned up or something. And literally, there may as well have been no away fans because it's just a little, smattering of people there. So let's give a shout out to the Fleetwood fans because it's not the most storied club. And that is a hell of a journey from Fleetwood to Ipswich on a Tuesday night. So there you go. Shane, if Norwich City manages to do the double over Ipswich, you have to wear a Norwich shirt for your next prediction videos after these games. That's not a question, Shane, but no, I don't. And that seems a really bad forfeit. It's like, so if the worst thing happens, then I have to do something worse again on top. No, I don't think that works for me. But yeah, very much looking forward to the horrible week around the East Anglian derby again. It's back this week. Alexander, which legendary Ipswich Town player would you add to the current squad and why? Well, my first answer is Marcus Stewart because he's my favourite Ipswich Town player of all time, and obviously I would be curing his motor neurone disease, which is a very sad story. Obviously, when your favourite player is struck down with such a horrible illness, and he's doing a lot for Derby Rimmer, the charity, and the motor neurone disease, and it's very painful to talk about. But I suppose it would have to be Kevin Beattie, just purely because all the Ipswich fans who saw Kevin Beattie talk about him. He's no longer with us now. He died I say a few years ago. It must be like 2019, I guess. 6 years ago now. And I talked to people who saw Beattie play. He was a centre back, but apparently he was a complete animal and a one-off, just a monster. And they kind of say, oh well. I say, well, he's a centre back. Well, how was he the best player? And they just kind of laugh and say, you just should have seen him play. So. Let's say Kevin Beattie. Planet Bull, what's the best football game you've been to? It's a predictable answer because it involves my team, but look up Ipswich 5, Bolton 3 after extra time. I think 2 penalties, 3 red cards, a hat-trick for Jim Magilton, and I think Bolton took the lead 3 different times in the game. There's an injury time or very late equaliser for sure. Just an insane game. You'll never... Excuse me, I'm struggling this morning. In the words of Martin Tyler, you'll never see anything like that again. And I think... how does that say? Swest lad down there, best match and worst match you've been to. I won't say worst match I've been to, but if you remember during COVID, the watch-alongs, there was a game between Barnsley under Valerian Ismail and Derby under Rooney and Rossignol. And Barnsley got in the playoffs playing like long ball, direct stuff, and, I thought it was fabulous to see that tactical diversity. However, in that particular game, Derby decided they were going to stop Barnsley's long ball by literally just booting the ball back down the ground. And there was no one in the stadium, and the pitch was crap. And it is, just amongst the worst games I've ever seen in my life. So I wasn't at the game. No one was at the game. I think maybe the poor press might have been in there if it was that point in COVID where they were allowed back in. But wow, that was not good. I would say go and watch it, but don't go and watch it. Take my word for it. It was bloody dreadful. Sorry, I missed out in the middle there. Chester Leicester. Who's the greatest player you've seen play live? I think in their prime. So look, I saw original Mark 1 Ronaldo play live for about 10 minutes at the end of the UEFA Cup game. But he'd just come back from injury. He was playing for Inter, and Ipswich played them in the UEFA Cup. So I did see Mark 1 Ronaldo play, but you'll talk about performance. In that game, actually, Christian Vieri of Inter scored a hat-trick, and my God, that was one of the best striker performances I think I've ever seen. But no, I think I need to go down the Italian route again. So in 1997, in a World Cup qualifier, I saw Italy at Wembley, and they won 1-0. And I think he was probably 30 or 31, playing left back, was Paolo Maldini in his prime. Wow. Yeah, just wow. Zola scored the winning goal, but yeah, Maldini. And he looked perfect. And he was famous for saying, if you make a slide tackle, you've already had to make a mistake. And he just stayed perfect all game. Never left his feet. Barely left his half. And I do remember one thing. It was like he came out of his half, old school Italian defender. And he could have played wing back. He like sprints past someone, neat and tidy, slides it inside, and you're like, yeah, you're really good at attacking as well. So Paolo Maldini there, we'll say, is the greatest player I've ever seen play live. Ad Tyke, maybe a Barnsley fan. How can the wrestling and holding be stopped at corners? Mate, it is terrible, isn't it? It is absolutely terrible. I don't know is the answer, because football, there is such thing as fair contact. So maybe they just need to figure out the wording a little bit better, and it just has to be that shirt pulling in the end just becomes a complete immediate foul, an immediate yellow card. I don't mind right, you're jostling, I'm jostling, you might touch me, I might touch you. I don't mind that. You're trying to find space. You want the person who's the attacking player from the corner to be able to jostle and make space and then head it into the net, don't you? And by the same token, you want the defender to have a chance to out jump and head away and win their physical battle. That's the point. But when it's, right, if I stand here, so linesman is there, so blind side is there, referee's going to stop there. So if I go really tight, I can grab his shirt back here and pull him out the way or block him off or whatever, so my mate can head it in. And it's just rubbish, isn't it? It's just rubbish. So I think it's really difficult. And people moan about VAR and refereeing the game by video. But my God, if you checked every corner and every time someone pulled a shirt, you gave a penalty, well, there would be a penalty on every corner, because you'll find someone. But then who do you penalise as well? Because you'll find an attacking player pulling a shirt and you'll find a defender pulling a shirt. So maybe it's going to take time, isn't it? Maybe it just needs to be that if you grab an opponent's shirt, they're pretty good on counter-attacks, where pretty much if there's a counter-attack and a player just drags the player back by their shirt, it's always a yellow card and it's always a foul. The problem is that's far easier to police, isn't it? Because you're looking at two players and that's it, and everyone's watching the ball. Whereas in the penalty box, you've got, up to 20 players often in there, and you can't see all of it, can you? So either rewording or double referees, or they have there you go, here's a radical one. Every time there's a corner, you bring out the fourth official comes round and observes. Do you remember they had them? They had extra referees, didn't they? In the Europa League or something. But just for corners, they come out and they're literally watching for shirt pulling. And basically, that's what it said. The first instant of shirt pulling they see, they just penalise it and, either give a foul and a free kick to the defending team or just give a penalty. Although I do believe that unless the ball's in play, because we had this in an Ipswich game, Ipswich versus Brentford, where Brentford were very physical and very good at it, actually. But where if the ball is not in play, you can't give a penalty, apparently. Maybe change that. Just look, if you're pulling the shit, just give a penalty. Give him a free shot from goal from 12 yards. There you go. J Dubs, do you think a format like the Scottish Premier League could work somewhere in the EFL? Like the full top half playing off for playoffs in the second part of the season? J Dubs, I don't mind the suggestion, but it's not my thing. I don't particularly like it. Maybe this is just pure preference, isn't it? I'm not saying one's better or one's worse. It's just what I like. What I like better. Obviously, I work on the EFL. I study the EFL. It's a lot of games, but I like 24 teams and 3 up, 3 down, and a playoff. That does for me. Obviously, we're going to get on to making it more exciting, perhaps later in the video. But in terms of the actual structure, that works for me. Again, we're probably going to talk about reducing the amount of teams in leagues. Wouldn't it be great just to have complete parity and have 24, 24, 24, 24? But, of course, then it wouldn't be 92 teams. It would be 94, wouldn't it, if we had 24 all the way down? But, yeah, not for me. But, I mean, let me know if you're a fan of it, how well it works in Scotland and what tends to transpire. Right. I've bracketed these two together. Lee and United Ultra, both asking questions about Sunderland. So it might be fun to give a bit of an extended chat about Sunderland here. Lee asks, what calibre of players does Sunderland need to sign for the Prem? And United Ultra asks, do you think Sunderland will get above Derby's 07-08 points total? First of all, I will say it is a sad indictment of where we are with promoted teams into the Premier League that we've moved, and it's not an unreasonable question from United Ultra, that we've moved from, can Sunderland, who are the team that won the playoff final, the lowest ranked team in next season's Premier League, essentially, they finished what were they, 4th, so 24th in the pyramid. They're now in the top 20, and the question is not can Sunderland survive, but can Sunderland avoid being the worst team in Premier League history with that, whatever it is, 11 points for Derby. So first of all, and I'm not having a pop at the question, it's not an unreasonable question given we are where we are in football and the chasms. Isn't it sad that we feel we should ask that? Because when Derby broke that points record, it wasn't that Derby came up and it was mission impossible for the team that won the playoffs. Derby won the playoffs as well, didn't they, under Billy Davis? I think it was just a ridiculous... they didn't sign anybody, did they? And there was... I think I've watched a pretty good video about it on YouTube. Someone's done a deep dive there, and there was a managerial change. I think they won one game, didn't they? And then it just went south under Paul Jewell, and then they tried to sign, say, experienced players, and then the dressing room was lost, the recruitment went down, you get on the losing streak, and oh my God, it was horrible for those Derby fans. But Sunderland, I mean, look, arguably every team that gets promoted comes into the Premier League with some momentum, don't they? I know it's tricky, and we've seen teams kind of immediately stink it out, but you'd think Sunderland would have some momentum. So we'll circle back and we will talk about that a bit more. What calibre of players does Sunderland need to sign for the Premier League? I mean, I could sarcastically say good players, players that will keep them up, the best players they can possibly get. And although those answers are a bit reductive, they're all kind of true. I think we need to look at what Sunderland have done so far. And let's be honest, I didn't think it would work to get them promoted, not in the time that they've done it, where the strategy has been they've gone to the European market and they've just bought all young players, basically, haven't they? And let me just bring I think I can do it with the ages if you bring up the playoff final. Even people like Dan Neil are sort of younger than you think. Yeah, look at that. Sirkin 23, Hume 23, Riggs 17, Neil 23, Bellingham 19, Mundell 22. I mentioned the European market. Big majority of them are British. Obviously, we're then going to go on to Mayenda up top and Lefay. He's a little bit older. I mean, what an old age pensioner at 25. Obviously, Watson was in there as well. Isidor's only 24. And then you do have those people, Samed, Kjelda. They brought in loads, didn't they? Jensen Seal, is he still there? Ajic, who went to Pompey. So you would think that Sunderland would have to do something similar, or they couldn't completely pivot to something different. We've seen different strategies. We had Burnley's kind of buy British type thing, and they did go to the EFL a fair amount, didn't they? Will that work now? Will anything work now? You've then got what I think Sunderland probably will do in respects of, can they now do what they were doing but just at a different level? So instead of signing, young European players for 2 million, they can sign them for 5 million and 10 million and build up like that. But I know full well, because I support Ipswich and I've just been through this rigmarole that Sunderland are about to go through. You are going to get the people that say they don't have enough Premier League experience. And it's very, very frustrating, because you go up as a team that you literally can't spend as much money as the rest of the 17 because you didn't have parachute payments. And even if you did, you've got, what have Sunderland got? 3 years of PSR limit based on championship level. So they're rolling 3 year to include their first year of Premier League would have 2 championship years on. So literally you're at a point where you can't spend as much money in terms of PSR. I know Sunderland have got a big stadium and it will be full and they'll do well on commercials, but that's not going to hit an impact straight away in August of 2025 when they essentially want to build a squad to keep them in the Premier League. Look, if the question is, can Sunderland ride out their current 11, it's probably not going to work. That 11 finished 4th in the Championship, and okay, they're all better players than presumably they were at the start of the season. So, yeah, I would suggest the calibre of player, Lee, that Sunderland need to sign in the Premier League is what they have been doing, European market with... is Speakman still the sporting director there? I think he is. That has been their strategy, but bring up the level. Can you go a higher calibre and build in that respect? But can Sunderland do anything in the Premier League like that? Well, I blooming well hope they can, because we're in a pitiful situation. If someone, it's a great story, Sunderland, isn't it? Huge club historically, bad times under Ellis Short, pulls out the parachute money and gets out of Dodge. They end up in League One. Buffoonery ownership there in that silly Sunderland Till I Die documentary. Changes round again and, they're back in the Championship, losing the playoffs. Bad season last season. Go again with a young European squad and, winning the playoff final in the last minute as well in stoppage time. It's a hell of a story. You don't want it to then be, well, that's the end of the fun, guys. It's going to be rubbish in the Premier League now. And you will get that clanging, annoying from mainstream pundits of, oh, you see now, what promoted teams need to be able to do is they need to be able to defend. Like the promoted teams aren't trying to defend and aren't trying to stop the teams with 30 international players and who have built up squads with 100 million quid TV money over 10 and 20 years every season, some of them. Like, oh yeah, we're not trying to defend here, and we're naive by trying to use the same attacking patterns of play that we use that literally got us, what, in Sunderland's terms, 76, and Burnley and Leeds at 100. Sunderland proved they can defend, particularly in the playoffs with that tournament football. So, look, they'll be damned if they do and damned if they don't if they're in the bottom three, Sunderland. So, I hope sincerely to that second question that they will be above Derby's 07-08 points total. And my God, could the world, not just the football world, have some empathy for somebody who is seemingly highly disadvantaged here, trying to do their best? Or will these imbeciles and on the very mainstream platforms just yell and shout at Sunderland if they struggle, that they're pathetic and they're useless and have no empathy for the rather difficult situation that Sunderland will be in next season? A couple on Watford here from Owen and from Nicholas. Do you think Watford owner Gino Pozzo selling Udinese will mark the rebirth of Watford? Thoughts on Watford next season under another new manager? Those questions kind of go together. And one informs the other, doesn't it? So, yeah, we think the Pozzos don't have an interest in Udinese anymore, and we often had fun and games with players being transferred between the two teams, sometimes for interesting amounts, let's just say, and I will leave it there. What is the name of the new blooming manager? For God's sake, I'm very close season at the moment. Paulo Pezzolano, who's a Uruguayan manager, who, as you can tell, I know A, Jack, and B, you know what about. So, look, I have nothing wise to say about his management until I see Watford play. I do feel a bit badly for Tom Cleverley, who stewarded it reasonably well. You would say, for the most part, last season. I know they ended badly, didn't they? Pozzo is an owner who's been deemed, I don't know, a bit of a laughing stock just for sacking so many managers and changing so many managers. Are they automatically going to, become trustworthy and just amazing owners and patient and brilliant and fully focused on Watford because they haven't got Udinese? I'm not sure you can make that leap, Owen, in the question in terms of the rebirth. Will it help Watford? Possibly in terms of their retention, but I think, certainly from a trading point of view, I think the Udinese link has probably helped Watford as well. So, I don't know. There's pros and there's cons to this, as always. So, I will reserve judgment. I can see why Watford fans would be optimistic, but where the Pozzos are concerned, just keep your powder dry, is all I would say. Darren, and it's Liam, asking about Derby, although Liam's asking about Pompey as well there. How well, realistically, do you see Derby doing, sorry, I think I butchered the way he's asked that question, under Eustace? The form over the last 13 games under him seems difficult to ignore going into next season. With the right recruitment, it's a playoff push, seriously a possibility for Derby or Portsmouth. Well, the first thing I would say in very general terms, not even accounting for Derby and Pompey, that there is no mid-table in the Championship at the moment. The last two seasons, we've had a ton of points go in for four teams at the top of the table. This year, Leeds, Burnley, Sheffield United, Sunderland. And then the year before, it was Leicester, Ipswich, Southampton, Leeds. We then had a high tide both seasons. Luton have been relegated with 49 this season, and Birmingham get relegated with 50 the previous season, which has meant mid-table has been pretty much non-existent. Now, what that means is that basically, if you're a team that's better than relegation, and let's pick a team like Norwich, who were 8 points above relegation, well, they were also 11 points off the playoffs. And I know that's literally what mid-table is, as in between. But what I'm saying is, if you wind back, I know Norwich had a horrible end to the season there, but if they'd probably had an average end to the season, they would have been very close to the playoffs. And with full love and respect to these teams, in the past few seasons, Bristol City got in this year on 68 points. And, you know, well done Liam Manning. But I think self-aware Bristol City fans are kind of like, oh, well, we got in there, but maybe if Middlesbrough and West Brom and Norwich, maybe with better budgets and arguably better squads, hadn't stuffed it up so badly, they would have been in there. But and then you look previous seasons, maybe not last season, but of course the season, you know, we had Huddersfield in the final and Luton in the semis 2 seasons before, and then of course we had Coventry, Luton and Sunderland the season before. Sunderland had just come up from League One, and of course Luton and Coventry had made their way from League Two over the previous decade. So it's just a resounding yes, of course. You know, Derby and Pompey, if they put it all together, you know, teams will have good seasons and improve. Teams will have bad seasons and fall off. And yeah, where we are right now, it is very, very open in terms of, you know, I've mentioned them, and this is with love, and they've done great jobs. Bristol City, Huddersfield, Luton, Coventry. There you go. Look at Luton and Huddersfield. They're both starting next season in League One, and they've both been in the playoff final in the not too distant past. So from a very general point of view, yes, absolutely. Of course, specifically on Derby, well, you can very easily make the argument that John Eustace left Birmingham pretty close to the playoffs. He left Blackburn pretty close to the playoffs, and Blackburn could have got in there on the final day. In fact, I think, did Blackburn take the lead at Sheffield United? I think they were in there for about 2 minutes or something, weren't they? So, yeah, of course. If, I mean, what's the differential in the squads between what Eustace had at Birmingham, and this is right at the start of Nighthead, so I know they've, you know, invested like no one's business since then. But Blackburn got an amazing squad championship-wise? No, not totally, but there they are, 7th. There you go. So what Eustace will do, and what he always does, is makes a very organised, and he said this in our interview on this very channel, makes a very organised, very tough to beat side. And if you get that right, whatever league you're in, you're probably going to be in the top half, aren't you? Because you don't lose many games. Okay, you might not be right at the top where you can win tight games. You don't. If you're just organised and hard to beat, you don't regularly win tight games. It's teams that have got loads of quality, individual quality to win them a tight game, and then, you know, it's tight, but so much possession, so many shots, and you really good teams, they'll just win these games, you know, by hook or by crook in the last 10 or 15 minutes. That's just football, isn't it? But yeah, if they have a good summer, and, you know, we just think Eustace is a very useful hand at championship level. Get a good start, of course. Yeah, of course they can be up there. You know, get above that 1.5. I mean, look, 1.5 points per game is 69 across the season, which not only would have got you in this season, Coventry were 5th with 69. So, yeah, why not? As it pertains to Pompey, I feel it's slightly more difficult for Pompey, although I don't know whether that's an unfair comment, because both sides came up from League One last season, and Pompey finished above Derby. There's just this stature thing where, having covered the Championship, because Derby have been in it so much more often than Pompey have in recent times, you almost just, rightly or wrongly, you just value Derby slightly above Pompey. But we've always said it's a bit of a cliche about Pompey. Okay, Fratton Park, fortress, leverage it. They did, go figure. It's not a cliche. They're brilliant at home last season, weren't they? In fact, there you go. 8th best team in the league at home, 40 points. So, if they got 30 points away from home, Okay, that's difficult because you have to be the sixth best team away from home to get 30 points because teams, as you can see by that, skew better at home than away. There you are. That's what Pompey need to do. 70 points. Probably be in there, won't they? Although, you never know. We might go back to a normal looking league table next season where you need 73, 74 points to get in the playoffs, where you don't get relegated with 49 and you don't have two teams right at the top with 100. Maybe we get an even more even spread, but the way the Championship's operating, maybe we don't. And to be honest, that would be more of a hope for the likes of Derby and Pompey to have a great season and get in there. But absolutely, it's, when I'm talking about the Premier League, I'm less like this, but no, it's an absolutely, and if you've seen Ipswich finish second after being in League One, Sunderland finish sixth and get into the playoffs, then I don't see a reason why not, both with good managers as well, Massinio and Eustace, why those two sides couldn't be in a playoff push or even in the top six. But don't hold me to that when I'm doing my 1 to 24s if I've gotten 15th or something, but it definitely could happen. Tom, I know you got to see a different side of it on Saturday, but what's your honest opinion on Wembley? Great question. I can't stand the place personally and wish England would play more games on the road and cup semis were back at club grounds. It's not like we haven't got a plethora of great ones nowadays. I know this will never now happen. What a good question. So obviously I'm going to start this by saying I'm going to tread carefully with this because I was incredibly humbled and privileged, as you've mentioned there, Tom, to have been a guest of the EFL at the playoff final. And for me, as a gobby YouTuber who's just basically, I'm a fan with no more credentials than anybody asking the questions or anybody watching this video, other than I committed to doing a YouTube channel and I've done it for a few years. So you build up a platform and, I'm not Sam Parkin, who I collaborate with, who, I always say to Sam, I try and be so respectful of his career and say, look, in one day, pick any one day of your career, as soon as you walk through that player's entrance and, went to a training session or heard a team talk or played a game, you have experienced football in a different way than any fan ever could do. So, I'm very humble and very privileged to have been there. It was interesting behind the scenes. It's not without its stress, I've got to say, and I understand the guys from the EFL. I had to phone up. I had to be collected outside. I had to go through layer one of security. And this was only because I was accompanied by a guy in an EFL suit, David, who was lovely. So I was marched through because I was accompanied. It would have been much, much harder. I would have then needed to have got my accreditation beforehand, but I could go through. No, he passed it to me there. So I did have my lanyard thing beforehand. And then we were very lucky. We went up and I was shown, this on the vlog actually, I was shown the players' entrance, which, unless you're with the guy in the EFL suit, you don't get to go there. And then you walk through the players' entrance into the holding area. And then, it was crazy. So you showed your pass to get into that. But then we were lucky enough to go out into the dugout and just onto pitch side and see the trophy. To even walk through that, you're just literally, the classic guy in a suit with an earpiece just glaring at you. And every step you take, you're showing your pass and and if it doesn't, you haven't got, so they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they're color coded. And all the guy on pitch side at Wembley gets told is, right, anyone with red or above or orange or whatever the colour is can come through. Anybody who doesn't have that, no questions, no nothing. They do not pass here. That's your only instruction for the day. You don't discuss it with them. They're not coming through. They need to go and get that accreditation. So it's pretty stressful, actually. When you go to football as a fan, I show up where I like, come in where I like, go and get a cup of coffee or whatever. I'm in the privileged position that people recognise me and come and chat to me. So it's actually really fun going to games because someone will come up and I can have a chat to them about the club they support, which is very lovely. And then to get to the press box again, I had to walk with David, who was great, and he marches me through. And then I didn't. There was some issue then with my accreditation, and they said, "Well, you're okay while you're with David, but unless he accompanies you everywhere for the whole day, you can't go in there, i.e., pitch side." And they'd had me booked. I had a table booked. You have a little table with a screen. It's fantastic, honestly. The press facilities are incredible at Wembley, by the way, to Tom's question. I was fed, and you could just go up and grab lamb kofta, and I had a coffee, I had a Pepsi Max. You have a table, you get given a team sheet, you have a screen to watch replays and things of that nature during the game. Just absolutely brilliant. But again, the guy said, well, if he marches you through, that's okay. But my supervisor, as soon as he's gone, is going to come and get you and take you out of there because you're not accredited to be there. So then he had to come and get me a different pass. And there's a guy called Billy and Sam, who was, I've got to say a big thank you to, who organised the whole thing, who's marketing there at the EFL. I'm stressing them out now. I'm like, oh, guys, I'm sorry. I haven't got number purple or whatever to be in here. So it's pretty stressful in some ways, but a massive privilege. And then I hadn't realised at the end, after Tommy Watson scored the winning goal, I saw lots of people kind of exit. I didn't realise what they were doing. But if you walk just to the side, there's the mixed zone bit. And I realised, oh, look, there's the steps where they go up to the royal box. So I got a little bit of footage at the end. If I got there quickly, I could have seen all of those Sunderland players walking up to the royal box. And no joke, there's some security there, but there's no rope or anything. You're literally just 2 metres away from all of them. And of course, they're happy as Larry. They've just been promoted to the Premier League. So that's my experience behind the scenes, which wasn't specifically what Tom asked. But I understand people having issues with Wembley. I love the history of it. And when you walk the bowels of it and you see all the pictures, which I know you don't get to see that from the fans' perspective of, all the matches and the concerts and the England stuff and the playoff stuff and all the pop stars and the shows that have been on there, just brilliant, just dripping with history. And once that stadium is 100 years old, it will feel even more. But I'm afraid all of us will be long gone by then. We will have had our go on this wonderful ride that we call life by then. I get why people find it a little bit sterile. Personally, I would prefer if the bottom tier was stacked a bit steeper, because the bottom tier is stacked quite shallow. You're already getting quite far from the pitch, and then when you've got the middle tier where the best seats in the house are, which is obviously a hospitality and a financial thing, then by the time you get to the top tier, it does feel like, the way I've described it before, like you're sitting outside a football stadium looking down into a football stadium below you. So it's difficult, isn't it? And particularly in playoff finals, I think there's a bit of a struggle with fans when they watch their club. They're either in their season ticket seat at home and, everyone knows where the singing corner is and, your way in and your match routine and where you chat to your mates and where you get your beer or whatever pre-game. In Wembley, everyone's kind of split up and no one knows what to do. And you get, in a playoff final particularly, you'll get a family whose kids have maybe never been to a game before and it's this brilliant experience. And then you'll get some middle-aged bloke who thinks it's his right to stand up all game in front of the kid from the family because he's supporting his team. And it's this mixture of, and it's like, right, I wish they'd put him downstairs so he could have stood with the singing section or whatever. And it all becomes a bit I don't know, a bit of a cluster, isn't it? So, yeah, I went to the old Wembley twice. We already mentioned it in this Q&A. Once to see Ipswich beat Barnsley in the playoff final. What a day. And once to see England play against Italy. And look, my memories of those, I was just in awe of the whole thing. But yes, I would. I mean, you can't rebuild it now, and I just feel like the views could have been better. When you compare it to some new build stadium. I was talking to someone about Coventry the other day. Find me a bad seat in Coventry where the view's not excellent wherever you're sat and you don't feel like you're too far away or what have you. Whereas Wembley, I think, suffers from that just a little bit. In terms of cup semi-finals, yeah, Tom, probably you and I are a similar age. And yeah, Villa Park. And I just go to Ryan Giggs, extra time, that goal, Villa Park. And would that moment have been as iconic, Giggs scoring just the most amazing goal in this miraculous rivalry between these two incredible teams, Ferguson and Wenger. Keane's been red carded, Bergkamp, the penalty saved by Schmeichel. Giggs, this incredible player, this incredible goal, swinging his shirt around his head, pitch invasion. Would that have been as special if it was at Wembley than if it was at Villa Park? I don't know. You tell me in the comments. Jay, what do you think of overvalued price young player going off in academy? So I think, sorry, let me just have a swig of my drink. I should have fueled up with a coffee, shouldn't I, to do this Q&A. So I think what Jay is asking is, what do I think about the valuations of players in academies? I don't much like it, but I understand why it is the way it is. I was talking to a Chelsea fan yesterday, and a huge part, especially with PSR now, valuing these players as assets that, it's horrible to talk about human beings, elite sportsmen who are living their dream, who have got to the top, assets on a balance sheet, but it is what it is. The commodity of like Mason Mount when he went to Man United, who'd been bought through for zero at Chelsea, and then no depreciation, just pure profit on the balance sheet. So I get it, and I get why they trade in those ways. What I don't like is the difficulty of, you want to get the Cat 1 Academy status. And I've got to say, from an Ipswich point of view, I've had the conversation, and if you want to ask Jay, Joe Fairs, who's on Blue Monday with me, he can answer you way better than me, who's a real expert on academies. But I think there's a limit before contracts are signed where you have pretty much zero protection. So there's been instances where Ipswich have developed players who have been super highly rated at the age of, I know this is crazy to say, 14, 15, 16. And then before you can get them on a pro contract, here come Chelsea, here come Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, etc. And they take them for £250,000. And then either it works out and, they're Harvey Elliott or Harry Wilson or whoever. I don't know whether they're good examples. You probably think of better examples. Tammy Abraham, Mason Mount, whoever, that can then either play in the first team or be sold, or just nothing happens with their careers. And you kind of feel like, well, the nothing happens thing, they obviously went to an academy that was too much for them. Would life have been different if they'd stayed at the Ipswich Academy or the Watford Academy or whoever, Stoke City or Preston, whoever? So I don't much like it. I understand it is the way it is. I'd love there to be more protection. So if Millwall have a real red-hot player, and I know they've bought through Romain Esse and sold on brilliantly this year, and well done, great job, Millwall there. But you'd almost like some protection where, they can keep the players and they have like the first refusal on the pro contract, and it's then market value. It's then, right, hang on a minute, Chelsea, you want a player who's going into your academy. Okay, well, market value when you sell him is millions and millions and millions. Why do you get him for $250,000? And how is that fair on Millwall or Ipswich or whoever? So I think more protections need to go in, and that if there is big money for these players, and look, if you're Southampton and you're in the Championship and you can loan Taylor Harwood-Bellis, who's come through that amazing academy at Man City, why wouldn't you want a player who's fast-track that player who's been trained brilliantly? And I know Southampton have got their own excellent academy, but why wouldn't you want to buy that player in? And then, it costs you 18, 20 million quid, doesn't it? I would just like there to be more recompense for their club that, does the first bit of legwork, if that makes sense. But do check out Joe on Twitter if you want a better answer than that. Matthew, there's a couple of these. Do you fear Ipswich could suffer what Luton did this season with double relegation if they don't get the summer right? And AR's asking about Danny Roll, but he also says, are you worried that Ipswich may suffer back-to-back relegation like Luton? I mean, famous last words, no, I'm really not. And I would definitely take the bet with you that Ipswich won't get relegated from their Championship next season. But the thing with double relegations is no one sees them coming, and they're often a massive shock, aren't they? There's a question later. I wonder if it's on the next page. It's there you go, White Hart Dane. I'll go back, I promise. Wolves, Sunderland, and now Luton mentioned them. Do you think one of the three relegated sides? So I'll kind of parlay that into this question. Wolves was an interesting one, wasn't that? Although, when was that? 2009, 10 or something? After Mick McCarthy, in fact, and it all fell to bits. Sunderland, I think we can easily explain away. Relegated from the Premier League. The sale was then predicated on Ellis Short keeping the parachute payments, and we all know what happens if you have a team that gets relegated and you just pull the parachute payments. There's nothing to work with then, is there? You can't afford the contracts you've signed in the Premier League. You'd have to get rid of all those players and cut your cloth accordingly. And if you're between owners, you've got no money to spend on transfers. So, I understand why that happened. And Luton was interesting last season. Luton, I think you can explain fairly simply why it happened. That they were already... I don't know what the numbers are, but Luton fans claim when they were promoted, they were in the bottom six for wage, bill and salary anyway. You'll be able to look that up. Check out Kieran Maguire's work or Swiss Ramble on that. And then, did they have a Premier League squad and loads of assets when they came down? No. Did they cash in on anyone when they came down? No. I think the biggest one was Ross Barkley, but the way that deal was kind of ratcheted, that was never going to kind of bring in a ton of money anyway, was it? So, and they also need to build a new stadium. So I just don't think the comparison with Ipswich and Luton, I think it's apples to oranges, because Ipswich have come down with lots of assets. Ipswich did spend more than 5 million quid on a player, so they've got that to roll. Ipswich aren't saving money for a new stadium. Ipswich didn't get promoted. I mean, they didn't have a massive wage bill in comparison to everyone else, but it wasn't what Luton's was when they went up. So, no, but look, if Ipswich have a horrible start, recruit really badly, sack Kieran McKenna, hire someone that doesn't work out and then sack them, have problems with injuries and just get on a downward spiral, of course, I don't think that's going to happen, but that's probably how they would get relegated. AR, do you think Danny Roll will stay at Sheffield Wednesday? No, I don't. And there's more concerns now. I think there's just some issue with getting him out of there with some kind of compensation payment in order to take him, I think is the issue there. So I guess Danny Roll's just waiting for whoever comes in for him to meet the compensation payment. But no, I do not think he'll stay there long term, just based on quotes we've heard from Mr. Roll and the eccentricities of the much discussed on this channel, Mr. Chansiri. Jake, is it time for 3 up and 3 down regarding League 2 and the National League? Yes, Jake. I would be an advocate of that. And I also don't agree with 4 down from League 1. Don't like that. I think that I would like, and call me OCD or whatever, I would like 24, 24, 24. Top 2 up automatic in all of them, because obviously we have top 3 up. I mean, that's just crazy as well that you get 4 out of League 2, but then only 2 go in. It all seems very, very skewed, and I get it. You know, you want to keep your members in your league and protect them. I get it, don't you? But no. So I would be an advocate of 3 down from League 1 instead of 4. 2 up automatic from League 2, plus 4 playoffs and 1 promoted there, and then 3 down and 3 up from National League. I think that's fair in a 24 team competition, and I think it works out quite nicely in terms of the cream rising and, you know, people ultimately getting what they deserve. Harrison, what can solve the Preston North End curse of being mid-table every season? Oh, mate, that's a difficult question. New ownership, fresh coat of paint there. But then the Hemmings family would argue they're putting a ton of money just to keep the lights on and keep them in the middle of the Championship. I think you just get stuck where they are. Obviously, building stars is the way around it. But can you make that leap one season to go with an incredibly young team, just sign loads of youngsters and make the gamble? Because you're risking relegation, and obviously Preston finished 20th last season, didn't they? So, I don't know, chicken's coming home to roost. And dare I say it, you're not going to want to hear this. Getting relegated is never a good thing, but sometimes it might be better for a club and a fan base to just have a season where they score 80 to 90 points and win and get some winning mentality in. Because by definition, if you're... and I had this, Ipswich were years in the middle of the Championship, just boring, wasn't it? And when you're that team, we used to look back on the Blue Monday podcast and say, when did we last win a big game? Because if you're in mid-table, always, that means you very rarely beat the bigger teams in the league. Because if you did, go figure, you'd be up there. There's going to be the odd one. You know, I remember Ipswich going to Villa away and nicking a 1-0 win. Okay, Villa are having a bad season then, but you're almost over a 5-year period saying, when did Ipswich go to a big stadium and win a game? Because they're constantly in the middle of the table. And if you're in the middle of the table, you're very good at beating, with respect, Burton, MK Dons when they were up in the Championship. You do the double over them, but you never beat any of the big teams. So, God, any of those things, although I'm not prescribing getting relegated to League One as being a good thing, but I don't know. What if you bounce back and all of a sudden you've got winning mentality and everyone's super happy and the stadium's full up and, you know, the club's riding high. Bamdy boy. Will Leicester be one of the favourites for promotion even with a, say, 6 to 12 point deduction? No. I think 6 to 12 is too many. I think if it's 4, it's all right. I know you'll say, oh, Ben, it's just 2 points. But I just feel if we get something vaguely similar to the last 2 seasons where you need a whole ton of points, then it's a definite no. Six off is, you know, on a race where Sheffield United basically had one bad week and that killed them. And they had a 2-point deduction, remember. I just think the margins are too fine to cope with 6 points, maybe 4. If you get a more normal looking table where maybe the top 2 have got 92 and 89 or something, and, you know, it's a bit less ridiculous than it has been, maybe you can do it with 6. Maybe. But I don't know. Is it going to go that way with the chasms? And I know we're coming on to talk about that, aren't we? God, if it's 8 points, 10 points, 12 points, no. And then you're looking at... I mean, look, they can still get in the playoffs, I think, with a 12-point deduction. Sheffield United were a year 1 parachute team, weren't they? And if you deducted 12 points off them, they would have been on 78. They wouldn't have even dropped a place. They were 14 points ahead of Sunderland. So, yeah, playoffs maybe. And, yeah, if Leicester keep their quality, then, of course, they can win the playoffs. I think the more pressing issue for Leicester, the worst punishment would be a business plan, wouldn't it? Rather than a points deduction. If you were to say to Leicester fans, what would you rather? 6 points off or a soft embargo or even a complete embargo in August and a business plan, which would mean they couldn't sign a Conor Cody or a Harry Winks or a Fatawu or a Mavadidi or a Hermansen like they did last time. And they'd probably have to sell Hermansen, who we've just mentioned, El Canouse. I don't know who else would be. Leicester fans probably tell me in the comments who would be, the big names that would be off the grid and sold in that respect. But yeah, it'll be very interesting because we think it is coming down the road for Leicester this season. The worst case scenario is they get 8, 10, 12 points and a soft embargo and a business plan. And then, yeah, God, could be mid-table then. But yeah, we shall see what the punishment is and how Leicester kind of mitigate and work around. And let's be honest, and I say this with respect, in terms of workarounds, Leicester have been pretty damn good at that when they've been in the Championship in previous campaigns, haven't they? I think White Hart Dane has I kind of answered that with the double relegations. Do you think one of the 3 relegated sides are in such danger this time? No, I don't. I think we'll still have Southampton up there. I think if McKenna stays, Ipswich will be up there. The only thing is there's always the potential for a total disaster season. I think you've got extra things with a possible points deduction and embargo and business plan at Leicester that could drag them downwards. But no, I don't see any of Leeds. I'm just looking at a table here. It says Leeds, Burnley, Sunderland, Ipswich, Leicester, Southampton being in relegation danger. Right. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a coffee and go to the toilet because I've already done 1 hour, 7 minutes on this Q&A. Okay, here we go then. I knew we were going to get a load of these type questions about the state of English football and the perilous situation that we kind of appear to be in right now. I'll just try and acknowledge all the questions, then I'll try and answer there. James, do you think the structure of our pyramid needs looking at, and some suggestions there? Dan, how have clubs without parachute payments actually managed to get up? Gary, views on parachute payments. Paul, do you think they should stop parachute payments? S. Morris, if all 3 teams get relegated again, how would you change the Premier League? Moze, how do we fix the gap between Championship and the Premier League? And Map, how do we solve the broken football pyramid? I knew, given our subscriber base, that we were going to get that type of question. So, look, obviously, it's a long, drawn-out answer here, but I'll try and talk about some of the points there. The first question there from James is kind of asking about the actual structure. I don't have a massive problem with the actual structure, as in 20 team top division, 24, 24, 24, and a 92. I mean, I don't see why we couldn't have parity and have 24, 24, 24, 24, and it would become the 94. I know that would trigger a lot of people who like the number 92. I get the idea. The Premier League wants to be more exclusive. But I don't know, you tell me. It would be nice if it was even. And I know normally the suggestions are you go for a Premier League 2 and you go 20, 20, I don't know, 24, 24, and then double National League or whatever. There's various ways of restructuring it. The obvious issue with the structure is the fact Premier League, EFL. There's your problem in absolute microcosm, isn't it? That you've got one organisation running just the top, just the most prestigious, just the richest part of it. And then you've got another organisation running the rest of it. And here's the issue. You have Narnia. You have a wardrobe where people can pass between Organisation 1, which has all the money, all the stardust, all the opportunities, and Organisation 2, which doesn't. So in terms of the actual structure, I don't have a problem with it the way it is, but it's the way it's being administered that's obviously the problem. Which then takes us to money, and there's like loads of questions about parachute payments there. I'll answer 3 questions about parachute payments in one go. So, parachute payments are one part of a massive problem in English football, which is cliff edges between teams essentially in your ladder, your hierarchy. It's called a pyramid, and a pyramid goes up gradually. However, it's not like that, is it? Because what we have is we have an elite who's in the Champions League all the time, who are levels above everyone else in the Premier League. We'll call them the rest of the 17. And some would argue that chasm has now been ring-fenced by PSR, where you have a club the size and scale of Newcastle with owners with more money than God, who are seemingly finding it quite tricky to step in to that kind of elite in terms of the PSR mechanisms, despite having fan base, history, very wealthy ownership, good players, good manager, everything you'd need, but seems to have been ring-fenced. So then you go down to the next chasm, which is the 17. And someone like Newcastle or Bournemouth, who's in the 17, feel like they are light years away from the elite. Then you have the parachute bunch, don't you? And they're at most 3 teams a season. And they're in this weird little ecosystem of their own. So if you take it as, and these are completely rough numbers, but say a team in the 17 who's not in the elite getting Champions League money is going to bring in £100 million TV revenue, or just say that much TV revenue, then a parachute team will get, 55% of that in the first season in the Championship, and then 45% in the second. And then if they're up for more than a year, they'll get another 15%. I can't remember 55, 45, 50, something like that. I can't remember the exact numbers. But what you get then is, so here's your elite class, zillions, billions, Champions League, whatever. Your 17, Premier League TV money, rich beyond their wildest dreams. Then you get your parachute teams, which are kind of halfway in between an EFL team and a team in the 17 who's not an elite team. So on the one hand, they're complete paupers in Premier League terms. But on the other hand, they're way, way richer than everybody else in the Championship. And as I've mentioned, we're passing in between the 2 divisions and expecting this kind of weird system to work. So take my team, Ipswich, who is now going to be a parachute team. Under the current system, it felt impossible for Ipswich to challenge in the Premier League. I mean, they're a bit of a weird case because they never had parachute payments to get up, which a lot of teams do. And we'll talk about the problems of that in the EFL in a second, which meant that the PSR allowances are lower, your 3-year rolling limit. For Ipswich, God, had 1 year of League One on it, 1 year of Championship and 1 year of Premier League. And you just don't feel like, let me just pick a team. Let's pick a team that are just randomly somewhere in the Premier League. Let's pick Crystal Palace. And I'm going to click on their history, which I think I know I can do on here. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So Crystal Palace have had 12 straight seasons in the Premier League. So every one of those seasons, just round it up, just call it 100 million. Every one of those seasons, if Palace have averaged 100 million TV money, they have brought in £1.2 billion over that period to finish. The highest they've finished is 10th. The lowest they've finished is 15th. So to finish between 10th and 15th in the Premier League, they've been bankrolled by 1.2 billion. And let's be generous, call the Championship or EFL TV money 8 million quid a year. So 12 of those is very happily going to land up to 96 million over that 12 years. And you can see the historical imperative of this now happening, where year after year, if you're not having to go at Palace, don't hate the player, hate the game. But if Palace have been able to build up their asset base and their squad to a point where, and we mentioned this a lot, where they can go in to the Championship and sign, Remain SA, and just give him 2-3 years to develop. One of the best players there, or highest potential players there at Millwall. Eze, obviously, they've taken from the Championship. Sarr, but then they've had the likes of Nketiah. How much would, I don't know if it tells me here on Footmore, how much would Nketiah have cost Palace? I'm guessing 30-40 million quid across that transfer. No, it doesn't tell me there the exact fee, but you take my point that it becomes very, very, very hard to compete. So on the one hand, you have a team that comes up who, and I mean, I get that some people will say, "Oh, Ben, why are you talking about parachute payments? They get 100 million quid TV money." Yeah, they do, for that one season, and PSR is a struggle, and there's a big squish in terms of how you can spend that, and everybody else has got, 8 players who would immediately get into your, or rather, let's flip that conversation. Your 3 best players would all be on the bench for Crystal Palace, basically. That's the level you've got to kind of, make, because we've had this Premier League EFL thing. So then you get these weird stasis then, don't you, so it'll be Ipswich, Leicester and Southampton next season who will be receiving, say, 55 million quid parachute payment, while everyone in the Championship gets 8 million. And it has a ridiculous distorting effect then on the Championship, doesn't it? Where Sheffield United last season, for example, in January, signed Tom Cannon for £10 million. And they will be competing against, Sheffield Wednesday, whose probably top transfer fee was £250,000 or something like that. So, sorry, I didn't mean to put the 2 Sheffield clubs against each other there. But so my point is, when you're talking about parachute payments, you've got to acknowledge the chasms. So elite, rest of the 17, parachutes, EFL. And then, I think it was Simon Jordan who mentioned this, it then does go on. People who support Championship teams who are moaning about parachute payments need to understand. I think he said the number was 80% of the EFL's money goes into the Championship or something like that. So then the chasms continue further down below the teams that are non-parachute teams in the Championship. So you have ridiculous chasms all the way down, where if you're a member of the 17, you feel you can't compete with the elite, but you're massively ahead of the promoted teams. If you're a member of the parachute cartel, you feel like you can't compete with the 17 and definitely not the elite, but you're light years ahead of the rest of the EFL. And then maybe there's the argument, I don't know whether it's light years, but you're certainly financed far better if you're a member of the Championship than you are a member of League One. But maybe we get into a more realistic situation. So for those people that say, sorry, let me just drink my coffee, parachute payments distort the Championship, yes, you're right. Yes, they do. For those people who say parachute payments are unfair, yeah, they probably are. And the whole chasms are unfair all the way down. Here's the problem. For those people that say parachute payments distort and are unfair, therefore we should remove them, I don't think that's the solution, is it? Because if you were to remove the parachute payments, essentially you would then have elite, the 17, And the argument for parachute payments is it allows Premier League teams to challenge, and then if they do get relegated, sign contracts, that they can then, if they have to keep a player and they can't sell them, they're not going to go into administration when they get relegated. If you remove the parachute payments, essentially you just have two chasms. You have elite to the 17 and the 17 to everybody else in the EFL. And if it seems impossible now for teams to come up, remember the last 6 that have been promoted have all been relegated in the first season, that would essentially make it even more impossible. I think so. Yes, I agree that we've got a massive problem and, there's distortions all the way down, but simply removing parachute payments, you may as well go to your Super League and just have a 17-team Premier League and not bother with promotion or relegation, because it feels like it's going to be impossible for teams to compete who go up. And this is the big kicker. What will it actually take for a team in the Premier League to get relegated when, as I've said many times on this channel, a lot of the teams in the Premier League have been utterly dreadful compared to what they should have done this season and been miles away from being relegated. So what's the solution? Well, that seems impossible as well, because you have got Premier League and EFL. And the Premier League obviously do everything they can to look out for the needs of the teams in the Premier League. And that can come across as at the expense of the EFL. So what ideally we need is, and I get it, I don't think anyone has a problem that if Liverpool win the league and Southampton finish 20th, that Liverpool are worthy of making more money and more income than Southampton. I don't think anybody has got an issue with that, have they? But it shouldn't be that, I don't know, pick another Champions League team who's here is then a chasm, a league above just the team that's one place lower, or the team who's 17, which actually happens to be Spurs this season, doesn't it? Compare Spurs to, it's a bit of a clanging one, to Leicester in 18th. It's an absolute chasm. So is there a way of distributing the money in a more even way all the way down the pyramid? Sounds very simple when you say it in one sentence, but why would a team in the Premier League, and this is the problem, is the voting rights, isn't it? They would have to vote to have less money. No one in human history has ever voted to have less money at any point in any time, have they? Surely not. That's just not a thing that happens in a capitalist society. So, I don't know. People will talk about independent regulators, but in terms of the problem, it's all about the distribution of cash. And dare I say, could you ease off on the PSR rules if the distribution of cash was better? I don't know. I don't know what tweaks you make. Certainly the idea that promoted teams come up and the PSR rules mean that they can spend less than the established teams is completely backwards. And someone said to me the other day, they said, why don't teams just get their parachute payments when they go up? And I kind of, it was a bit of a clanging backwards thing, but I kind of got what he was saying. But obviously parachute payments are, ultimately for teams that get relegated. But should promoted teams get a bit of a bonus at the start to give them a chance? I don't know. Again, why would Crystal Palace or Brentford or Bournemouth vote for that though? So I don't know. All of these miraculous levers we're trying to pull wouldn't be an issue if the team at the top made this money and gradually we cascaded down. So the idea that Sunderland could have a good season, get promoted, and then actually have a go at it without this ridiculous dance that the likes of Ipswich are going to be doing this year of, okay, we get promoted, right, we build loads of assets and we know we're going to get relegated. We're probably going to get relegated. Might survive, you never know. Didn't. We come down, right, we sell this player and this player. We know we're going to be completely dominant now because we've got parachute payments in theory. And we come up again and we might get a bit closer, but we might also get relegated. But if we do that 3 times, we might survive. That's dumb. It's the dumbest system I've ever heard, isn't it? Surely it should be that if Leeds and Burnley have just scored 100 points in the Championship, surely they should have a better pattern of play and winning mentality than Spurs, Wolves and Man United. And they should have a chance of leveraging that next season to be able to compete with them. We'll see if that happens, won't we? So, yeah, lots of questions about the pyramid. Lots of questions about the parachute payments. They distort. What's that song? They distort and derange. Like Love is a Stranger, isn't it? Eurythmics. They distort and derange, and they are unfair, but removing them won't solve anything, I don't think. It might even make things worse for more teams, and I get it. Very easy for me to say the 1 year now my team has got the parachute payments, but I think we have to be very self-aware. And if I am a genuine football fan who cares about the ecosystem as much as they care about my team, then yeah, you've got to be honest and say, well, yeah, of course, it's a massive advantage to have parachute payments and completely distorts the Championship. What were these remaining questions there? I think we've done it, haven't we? How would you change the Premier League? Yeah, I think we've done it there. Fix the gap. 50+1 rule. I think it's all down to the distribution, in my humble opinion. But there we go. It got very serious to end the Q&A. Get your comments in on that. And just a massive thank you for everyone. We haven't done a Q&A in the longest time. I've got to be honest with you. I always struggle for a video on a Friday. You know, what are we putting in? If you enjoy the Q&As and we can get some clips out from them, then yeah, be my guest. We will do a few more of these. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I have blabbered now for nearly an hour and a half. So maybe we'll stick this behind the paywall and make it members only and do clips, and then we'll make it available to everybody. But yeah, huge thank you for the questions. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And maybe we'll see you for another one.